Celebrity crushes really are fascinating to me because through some form of medium, whether it be on our phone, in the theater, or online, we find people who are at a different level in society compared to us, who have maybe immense amount of popularity, more than we do, and we just feel connected to them. We have this idea of the person, and we have this idea that they can be ours or that they are ours. And a lot of urges come up through that. But what I've learned from dealing with that is that those urges are there for us to help us understand that we are capable of feeling love, and that kind of love for someone, as strong as it is, but also how we're able to control them as we progress through our life. I didn't actually go through this until my sophomore year of college. And, I've mentioned a few times that maybe I'm a bit of a late bloomer in some regards, so this is another confirmation of that, at least for the time being. For reference, I grew up and rather got into pro wrestling and watching pro wrestling a little bit later than some people. I didn't grow up with it in kindergarten and ultimately finding out in about middle school what it actually is. Rather, in fact, I started watching it in middle school and sometimes still watch it to this day. I haven't been paying attention to it as much recently. But if you watch pro wrestling, or if you have any idea of pro wrestling, the women on pro wrestling television who do pro wrestling, who wrestle, they are fairly attractive most times to a degree. And I remember one time going into the Westchester County Center for a WWE live event, and this was by now at least 10 years ago. And the women's match that night was Paige against Natalya. And I'd been to previous pro wrestling shows and independent promotions at that, but I remember this one so specifically, even though it probably didn't even go like 15 minutes, because I think that altered my brain chemistry. You could search up Paige and Natalya, both very attractive women, and not just seeing them in the actual phone or not even television. You could maybe television or on your laptop or whatnot, seeing them on a screen and seeing them in person, completely different. And I didn't really know what these feelings were at the time. I watched, maybe not with as much interest as some could have from an entertainment perspective, from a pro wrestling perspective, before I more recently rather, kind of got into the nitty-gritty of understanding it. But I watched it with part intrigue and part fear, because I didn't know that this was going to be something that I was going to watch that night, quite frankly. It's not like I could search up the card before and see what the rundown was going to be for the show. But I think to that, because pro wrestling is where this celebrity crush story of mine comes about. And I'm thankful for the fact that it happened the way it did and what I've learned from it. And again, my sophomore year of college, I was watching pro wrestling, and at the time there was this woman, and there was this tag team between these two ladies by the name of Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley. They were Liv for Brutality. And the thing is, they were only together for not even like 6 months, if I remember correctly. But they were doing some viral stuff, and more specifically Rhea Ripley, like what she was doing. And Rhea Ripley, if you couldn't guess by now, was, and if I still have a choice today, it's my celebrity crush. And it was weird because for watching Rhea Ripley, because I had heard of her when she was in NXT before she got to the main roster, in my head I was like, I didn't actually think of her in that way. You know, I saw her in NXT, she was going more for like a steampunk aesthetic, and I just saw this like girl, slick back hair, a bunch of tattoos, and I was like, not necessarily my thing. But then the Live for Brutality days started, and I got hooked. And I wasn't even watching the show, but from social media, I got hooked. You know, she would pin the other women in a way where I'm not gonna, don't worry, I'm not going to physically do what she was doing. I'll try to describe it. You know, shoulders to the back of the mat, nearly like accordion way like this, and she was, you know, menacing over, like on the hamstrings, like pushing down in a very I guess if you want to call it a masculine looking way. And I saw that, and it hit me. There was something about her. I didn't really know why. I didn't know what for at the time. I guess I've come to learn that maybe I don't necessarily, and maybe I do, am in this predicament where if a woman is stronger than me, or maybe even taller than me, which is funny because I think she's like 5'7" in real life and I'm 5'7", so we're like the same height, but with the way they present her on TV, she is this larger than life human being. And that's how celebrities are. They're presented as larger than life. They're presented as these master classes of society, of their respective fields. In reality, they're people. They're just people. But I saw this picture, I saw these segments, and I was hooked. And the twist came when all of a sudden she announced at one point, I don't entirely know the timeline. I don't have 100% dates off the top of my head, but I do have stretches in my head. I knew where I was and knew what happened. She announced at the time who her then boyfriend was. And I remember a fire just building up inside me. It was an urge of jealousy. It was an urge of possessiveness of, why are you in this way? Why are you looking at someone in this light? It really hit me. It hit me pretty hard. And as someone who likes to be in control, I've learned that I kind of get scared when I'm not in control as much as possible. I was terrified. I was terrified of the fact that I didn't know where these feelings were coming from. I was terrified of the fact that I didn't have control of these feelings, but the fact that they were happening to me. And I was terrified of the fact that I felt so strongly about this particular professional wrestler, Rhea Ripley. And I remember, because at this point, she eventually later on turned on her partner then in Liv Morgan. She joined a stable in the Judgment Day, which still is a stable to this day. They don't look the same as they did when this originally happened. You know, back then it was Edge, Damian Priest, and Rhea Ripley as the third member and the one woman. Now it's a complete change. If you're watching pro wrestling, if you watch pro wrestling, you know what I mean. If you don't, just understand that the better majority, and those three people are not even in that group anymore. It's a completely new version. But I remember when she debuted and she, showed up in this, she had like a all black masked hoodie, because the idea is like, oh, who's this person? Who's joining the group? And they had teased that she would. And I remember she took off the hoodie. She took off the hood at least. Hair is dyed jet black, black lipstick, full emo Aussie. And I remember seeing that, and I straight up said, wow, that's a woman. And for the next 15 to 20 minutes, as the following match on the card ended up going through, I had butterflies. I had butterflies all through my stomach, into my chest, and I wasn't in control. And that really was, if I hadn't felt it before, which I had but didn't know what to do, this for me was something is happening. And partially, because I don't like not being in control, it's something's wrong. I remember calling my mom in hysterics. I'm like, I don't know what's happening to me. I don't know if I should be feeling this way, but is there something wrong with me? And I was in hysterics. I didn't cry, but I felt like I wanted to, because I didn't know why I felt so strongly about this person. And my mom, who I don't know if I've referred to her, at least in this way, on the page, on the channel, I sometimes see her as like a therapist in a way. And I think whenever you become a parent, you do take on that role. Maybe the mom specifically, the dad potentially, depending on how everything is set up. And my mom was just like, no, this is fine. This is actually normal. Everyone goes through it. There's something about, at the time, she was like, it's about her specifically, that really was something I felt drawn to. And I think it was more the dominance display and that kind of, progression that got me. But I remember she gave me kind of an ultimatum. She's like, all right, there's a few things you can do, and I'm going to tell you what I did and what I think you should do, because I think what I did was correct. She's like, you could either get away from that entirely, and I didn't want to because I was watching religiously at this time, or you could just follow them completely on social media and see everything that they post. And this gets to the first step, if you would, about how to deal with a celebrity crush. One, and this is actually kind of like this isn't even step one, this is kind of a prerequisite. What you should do is understand that it's probably never going to work. That this person probably will never meet you, that this person will never know of your existence. And at the time with pro wrestling, although now the WWE, they've leaned back on how many events they do, the way I kind of rationalized it was, okay, she's going to be on the road 300 days plus out of the year. That's kind of hard to deal with. And that's actually why so many pro wrestlers, they just date each other, because they're constantly on the road. They're constantly on the road with each other. There's jokes that supposedly in the WWE Performance Center, it's kind of like Love Island in a way, because all of these wrestlers end up dating each other. It is crazy. But that's step one. And step two, which is what I did, follow this person, whether it be a guy, whether it be a girl, whether it be anyone, everywhere on social media. Follow them everywhere on social media. Because the more you see them, and the more you see when they post, the more you see whatever they put up on these platforms, that heightened sense of overall attractiveness, it's going to start to just dip down. I'm not saying it's going to be a straight vertical line down, but the thing with celebrity crushes and whatnot, because maybe it's a very minimal sense of overall seclusion, and if it's sporadic, you have these very brief encounters with pictures of them, with updates of them, and that I feel only grows, and that actually grows the feelings inside of you. If you follow them on social media and you see everything they post, those feelings naturally start to not necessarily subside completely. I'm not saying that you're gonna get to the point where you don't even think about them, or maybe you will, maybe you'll move on, but you're not gonna feel strongly anymore. And you're gonna find, and this is what I found, you might actually not be insane. You aren't insane for maybe having these feelings about said person. And from what I learned was like checking out some of the comment sections and some of the rabid fans she has, that I'm actually not insane. That I'm actually one of the saner people who appreciates her work and appreciates the character and her overall look compared to some other people. Because it's a lot. And she actually, I haven't seen too much, but at this time, and she still does on occasion from what I've seen, she feeds into that entire machine. She accidentally at one point put up the aftermath of a tribute to a picture of her, and she put it on her Instagram story. She kind of didn't know what it was, and later on she ended up deleting it when she realized what it was. If you know what I mean by a tribute. Yeah, if you don't search it up. You're a pure soul, and I hope you stay this way as long as possible. But I was seeing some of the stuff that her fans were commenting, and how she could do like anything, and pardon a way to use a term, instant glaze. The one that stood out to me specifically was a selfie one time on her story, on her Instagram story. She put up a selfie with a filter on, because it's Instagram, filters. It was just her face looking into the camera, and there was South Park on the TV in the background. Nothing too extraordinary in my opinion, but oh my god, her fans were like, oh my god, it's too early for this. No way, why are you doing this to us? I'm like, this is just a picture with South Park in the background. It's a filtered selfie. There's nothing too serious at play here. And over time, I was able to manage myself a lot better. I wasn't constantly thinking of the thoughts that I was thinking at the start of everything. And eventually, and this is actually, I'm just going to jump ahead to a point where, since I started following her, and because now I'm at the point where I unfollowed her and her then boyfriend, now husband, because I don't necessarily need to see what they post every week anymore. But it got to a point where she ends up marrying this guy. He's also a pro wrestler in his own way, Buddy Matthews. He is an absolute beast at what he does. And it's funny because I've gone from kind of a complete 180. I've switched from, oh my god, I have this strong possessiveness over her, why are you with her, to healthily and quietly, because I'm not necessarily posting about this 24/7 online, happy for the fact that they found each other, and happy for the fact that they made it work, and I'm happy for the fact that they're married. I'm happy that they exist together. I think that you will find yourself in that perspective one day if you follow this quick two-step method, because that's really all you need to do. Expose, not necessarily yourself to them, that's scary, but expose and open yourself to the frequent exposure of said person that you're interested in. Because once you do that, and the exclusivity and the overall feelings will become a lot more manageable. You're not going to be necessarily salivating over anything and everything they post, especially if it's someone in the entertainment industry where they look physically attractive, and a lot of pictures are them showing their bodies off. You'll get used to it. You'll get used to it. And I think you'll find you'll progress to a point where it's a lot easier, in a way, to manage those feelings. Maybe you get to the point where I recently talked about, where you unfollow them. Because for me personally, I don't watch pro wrestling that much anymore. I don't need to be up to date with anything and everything she does, he does, they do. She's still doing exactly what she's doing. She's still at the top of the world. And at the time, it was very interesting when that entire saga started to begin, for me, she was really starting to come into her own. Now it's so fun to watch where she's at, because she's probably one of the biggest professional wrestlers on the face of the earth now that are presently working. And it's so fun to see that in general. And maybe you'll find yourself to a point where the following year, I ended up moving into an apartment with roommates. My entire saga with the Celebrity Crush happened. I was in a single apartment, which originally I had a roommate, and then he moved out in the spring to become an RA, so I just bought out the apartment. So I had a single to myself, or a dingle if you want to look at it from that sense. I went from that to living with roommates. And there was a night where the idea, and this is a general question you'll deal with, is they're asking like, oh, if you had a chance to use a hall pass on any one specific person on the planet, you don't have to deal with any of the repercussions of doing it, but if you had to choose someone, who would it be? And I thought about it, and not necessarily about the answer, because I knew what the answer was going to be, but whether or not I should share the answer, because it had been some time. I had gotten over it, but, the feelings were still somewhat there. And then I said, Rhea Ripley. Okay, that's probably going to be cut out of context. I hope not. If she ever sees this, understand that, yes, you might still be the choice, but also I have so much respect for you and your husband that I probably still wouldn't go through with it. I didn't fully say it with chest. I had to repeat myself 2 times. But of my 3 roommates, the one of them I lived with and roomed with, he was a very casual pro wrestling fan. He grew up with pro wrestling and then kind of stepped away from it. He didn't watch it every day, but he still knew of everything. And my answer actually shocked him. He was like, oh, it's actually a pretty good choice. I didn't expect that to come from you, but, you did good there. And then the other 2 people who were there, one of them was one of the other roommates. She didn't know who she was. Take the phone out. Pictures. She was like, oh, okay. The other guy in the room, one of the close friends of the girl and our other roommate, who was the 4th guy in our apartment. And I still talk with him to this day. We still talk about movies We talk about movies a lot more, but I stay in touch with him more frequently than the people I roomed with. And he's not even into women. And I showed him a picture and he was like, oh. I'm not saying that picture factory reset him, but he understood. And I feel like celebrity crushes, as we start to wind down on this, are something everyone goes through. I'm not going to tell you who you have. You're not going to know who will be yours until it happens. But if you're going through it right now, or you don't know what it is. I promise you that it's not nearly the end of the world. It's not terrible. And also, understand that those strong feelings that come up inside of you, they might not be fully love. There might be lust involved. But don't be scared of the fact that you're having those feelings. Understand that you're capable of having those feelings for someone. And once your understanding of that and knowledge of that's there, is in your mind, understand that you are so much better off. Maybe not with that person, because that person probably will never meet you. But by the fact that you know those feelings are possible, and by the fact that you now know how to control them.
Bonus content.
Well, January came to a close. Some people said it was a very long month. Some people didn't like what happened to them in January. I felt mine was pretty good. Let me know how yours was in the comments below. February, this is the first video of February. Next week, my plan is to do how to spend Valentine's Day if you're single. Because I've done it enough times to the point where I now know how to tell other people how to do it. Not really sure what is beyond in the further weeks, but this is February. 4 full weeks, 28 days, perfect calendar. I hope that you have strong feelings of love, maybe for someone or for yourself in this month. And I hope that you utilize them to the best of your ability. Bye now.
Bonus content.
Actually, one more thing. I am trying something new. The trackpad for my camera, I've been looking at it the whole time. You see my head glancing off to the right a few times? It's because I'm seeing my overall self and how I'm positioned in the shot. If you want me to go back to just winging it, looking into the camera, let me know. I don't know how visible it is. My glasses are good. They're not that good. Now officially, that's where we're at. That was today's and this week's overall try something new for me with content. Officially now. Bye now.